Buyer fraud, that is a huge thing, and the criminals are getting smarter on everything. Everyone thinks that they made a will, and so it's going to go to the next person. That will says, well, if you never probated that will and you only have 4 years to do it, then it hasn't been done. You have to go affidavit of heirship. Since Texas is a community property state, a seller that may have purchased the property prior to being married, because your wife now lived at the property, she has a homestead right in that property, which requires her to sign off on all the documents.
How important is to send the earnest and the option money?
The contract is invalid without it. Deceased people are probably the biggest issue that we have.
We have an amazing resource called a property spotlight at Austin Title. And this is something that any homeowner can log into the Austin Title website, QR code, scannable, beautiful little PDF document.
Have you ever wondered what a closing process looks like right here in Austin, Texas? Well, today in our podcast, all we're going to be talking about closing for buyers, sellers. What are your expectations and how is a title involved? We have the escrow officer and a title marketing rep right here in our podcast coming and telling us all you need to know and educate you all on the needs and the wants and what you need to be careful on, especially during your closing and closing your home. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, guys, we have Reagan and Danielle from Austin Title. I just want to say thank you guys for coming onto the podcast and explaining it to our buyers and sellers on the closing, especially here in Austin, Texas. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rima.
You're welcome. Can you guys tell me a little bit about each of your roles and what do you guys do?
So I work at the Georgetown location, and I'm an escrow officer there. So I just watch, we get the contract in, the commitment in, we make sure that the title is clear. If there's anything that we need to clean up as far as divorces, payoffs, unknown heirs, we work through that process, get it clean, get with the lenders to balance the CD, and then we go to the closing table and everyone signs their papers, and then we fund the file, and then they got a new house.
Okay. It's set in short, but there's a lot more involved, which we'll get into a detail in a little bit. And Reagan, what is your role?
So my role is business development. I help meet agents and lenders that work in the Austin market and introduce them to escrow officers at Austin Title at one of our 11 locations.
Okay. And guys, I have lots of questions from the viewers that I've compiled in a list. So we'll just kind of go off each of the questions. First, we're going to start with the basics, right? Can you explain what is an escrow officer? What does an escrow officer do during the home closing process?
So an escrow officer, we kind of oversee the whole file from contract to finish. We're making sure that all liens are paid, that your sellers are the rightful owners and no one else has an interest in your property. We're working with your lenders to make sure that the file is balanced, that everyone's paid, numbers match, sellers get their proceeds. But we're the middle piece for all the pieces. So really we're just the communication piece between sellers, agents, buyers, lenders, surveyors, everyone. So we have a little bit of piece of all of it. And it's our job, we have all the other details, but most importantly to communicate the process and where we are on each step.
And how is the communication usually involved? Is it the whole team compiled an email? Is it a private communication? How is that?
Well, when you get to learn your clients, repeat clients, you learn how they like to communicate. Some like to communicate via email, so we'll pop an email to them. Some is they want to be picked up the phone. They want the phone. If everything is going smoothly, they still just want an update. Some like text. It's just about learning your clients and what their preferred method of communication is.
Okay.
And then it's teaching everyone that's what has to be done.
Okay, perfect. And so your title as an escrow agent or
an escrow officer,
officer. Okay. So what are the differences between the title and then escrow?
So title is basically everything that has to do with a file as far as titling purposes. So vesting deeds, who is ownership. Escrow is related to everything with money. So there's different claims. You could have a title claim, meaning you missed somebody in title, you paid off the wrong people. Escrow claims if you missed taxes, earnest money was sent out to the wrong person when a file canceled. So escrow is money related, title is with title
For the
purposes.
title purposes. Perfect. And what are the main steps in a closing process for buyer and a seller here in Texas?
Main step, well, of course, getting the contract in first,
Uh-huh.
and then the earnest money, because then that's the valid contract that makes it go. And then like I said, I'm going to repeat communication a lot, because if we're a good team communicating back and forth, you're giving me steps before I even get the commitment in. So I'm already checking in with your sellers to get their payoff information. So we want to make sure that all of their payoff is taken care of, so that your new buyers don't have to worry about that. And then working with the lender to balance, and then the closing table. So it's just, as long as we're communicating properly in the beginning, the last steps are going to be easy.
I know in Texas, we're not really involved using attorneys, right? Much of versus some other states might be. We have you all as title kind of helping and going and doing all of that work. Now, which leading to title process and protection. Now, what exactly is a title insurance, and why is it important for both buyers and sellers?
So title insurance is important because, we are human. There are mistakes that can happen. And it's really with family land that you get the most cleanup processes. So everyone thinks, oh, my grandfather owned it and it just passed down the line. Well, if you've never done a probate for your grandfather, there could have been children involved that you had no idea about. So if heirs don't sign off on it, that could be a claim. So if you missed a payoff, there's first and second liens, and you miss the second one. So those are all claims, but title insurance works from the date of closing backwards. It doesn't work for future, it works backwards. So you're protecting yourself from past. And so it's important to have it, because, you never know what might happen or what something could have missed. And title companies have different plant researches where they go back so many years, and you have to go back to like the 1960s, 70s. Well, if you're looking at that now, 1970 doesn't seem that far away. So you want to have a plant that goes back even further, so that you know that you have all your easements correctly and stuff like that.
Okay. And what with the insurance?
The insurance is the product that you get to protect you from all those.
Okay. And what are the most common title issues you see in Texas, and how are they resolved before closing?
So the most common ones probably are deceased people, and everyone thinks that, they made a will, and so it's going to go to the next person that will says. Well, if you never probated that will and you only have 4 years to do it, then it's been 4 years and it hasn't been done. You have to go affidavit of heirship. So I think deceased people are probably the biggest issue that we have, is cleaning that up and just educating people on the process throughout that.
Okay.
And then divorces too. Because sometimes with divorces, it's in the divorce agreement that the husband gets the property. Well, if they never did a deed separately, that divorce record is not in public record. It's just in the district clerk. And so the public records have them still vested as husband and wife. And so you can either fix it by getting the ex-wife to sign it, or you can file the divorce, that everything in that divorce then becomes public. So divorces and deceased people are probably biggest issues.
Oh my gosh. Now we're going to talk about the right when you get the contract toward the closings, what really happens, and the process right now, right? So let's say it's probably a little bit different for buyers and the sellers. But when you get the contract, we're going under contract, we're sending the contract to the title company, right?
Yeah.
What happens to the money, right? The earnest money, the option fee, the communication in that.
So once we get the contract in, we send it to be open. Once the file is opened, then portals go out to your buyer and your seller. So the buyer portal is sending them wiring instructions or a mobile deposit so that they can upload their check for the earnest money. It's also asking them pre-closing information. Do you think that you'll be here for closing, or do you need a mobile notary? Both buyers and sellers have the marital status, because we need to know that for both people. And your sellers are getting portals, say, asking for payoff information. Are they going to be here? All of that information. So we can start the process very early on. So I would say within the contract, within a day or two, they should already have that portal, and that communication is starting right then.
Yes. And how important is to send the earnest and option money?
I mean, the contract is invalid if without it because it's within so many days that you have to turn that in. And so we have a lot of people that ask, "Hey, do I need to send that now?" And it's always like, well, you need to, because I mean, I can't govern what they negotiated, but I'm like, well, check with your agent. But there is a timeline on your contract that says you have to have that in with so many days. So
yeah, option is usually depends on what's in the contract, 3, 5, 7, 10, how many ever days they have, right? And then the earnest money, that's all held, right? Now, is it given to them towards closing?
The earnest and so the earnest and option is held within our file throughout the whole closing process. And so then it's given as a credit at closing on their closing statement. There is a clause in the contract that the option can be released upon the seller asking for it. And then you just create a seller credit debit line if that is the case. I don't see many times where they want the option money before it closes.
No. And this is credited to the buyers.
Yes.
Yes. Is there now, talking about that, can you break down typical closing costs for the buyers and the sellers?
So typical closing costs, let's go over the ones that are regulated by the state. So all title companies are regulated by TDI. So our policy fees are the same no matter where you're going to go. And your policy fee is based off of your sales price. So all of them are going to be in this. The state of Texas should have the same policy amount because we're regulated. Same thing for endorsements that the lender is going to require. Those are all regulated by TDI. Other than that, you're going to have like your escrow fee, a courier fee, attorney.prep fees as far as getting the warranty deed prepared in any releases. So the only ones that typically change is your escrow fee and who you pick your attorney.prep from.
So how important is it to choose from one versus the other title company? What should they look for?
Really, since we're regulated, your prices are going to be around the same. It's about building the relationship with the client and the communication. That's customer service is what's going to set you apart from your competition because we all have the same fees at the same price. So you want somebody that's going to communicate with you. You want somebody that their exam work is sufficient and excellent. So we have great examiners that take care of that.
No, perfect. And then let's say if a buyer has closed with the Austin title, right? And then if they want to sell that property, it might be just easier to go ahead and pick that same title company for that reason. Or would you say some otherwise?
I mean, yes, because we love a repeat customer, but we want to win other clients too that didn't necessarily get that experience and didn't get to choose us. When you do close up with us, we do have, we retain records. So we're going to have copies of our surveys that you had previously. So it's going to be easier to pull that from us. But, if we have to call around and hunt a survey so we can get a contract, we will.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that's the easier part, like if you want to, because all the information is already there. If you already work with one of the title companies. Now, what are the wire transfer or cashier check requirements? How can buyers avoid wire fraud?
So wire fraud, that is a huge thing. And the criminals are getting smarter on everything. We send our wiring instructions through a portal. So it comes directly from us and not from your agent or anybody like that. It's going to be portal. It's going to be password protected or a two-way authentication. So we have to have your email and a phone number. And then we always recommend calling us directly when you get the wiring instructions to re-verify them. Like I cannot stress that enough. Just call us and let us re-verify them with you. As far as cashier's checks at closing, we don't love to take them because now cashier's check fraud is a thing. And so we have not eliminated taking cashier's checks, but we do require that we get them verified before we fund. So if we get a cashier's check, we have to call the bank and let them tell us, yes, we issue that. There is no stops or holds. And so if we're not able to get that verified, then it will hold up funding.
That's true. Now, when they're closing a home, we're talking about timelines now. So we talked about the wire fraud. You always want to make sure, especially I tell my clients that, hey, nobody's going to send you instruction. Make sure you call the title company before you wire. They're doing it on time. So that way they know how to get that done, and you guys have that. Now, next we're going to be talking about is timeline and expectations, right? How long does it usually take to close on a home in Texas? What have you seen the shortest to the longest?
So I work with a lot of investors, and so their timelines are much quicker than your average resale. They're having to buy it from somebody that can't make their payments, foreclosure, deaths, or something like that. And they have contractors lined up that need to be there like 3 days from that. So I've closed something in less than a week. But if you're talking residential, probably 45 days, depending on your lender, because the lender has a timeline, like they order the appraisal, and then so many times, like so many days after that, they can order the next step. And so maybe like 30 to 45 days.
No, I think, yeah, that's usually have you seen what can cause the delay in a closing, and how can people prevent that?
So delays in closing is not, we're going to go back to communication. If at the last minute we don't know it's a mail out, because those questions weren't answered, then we're scrambling to get that timeline, because usually you need your seller to sign before to get their original documents back. So that could cause a delay. Appraisals sometimes get delayed. If you didn't fill out the payoff information form and we haven't ordered it, that could cause delays. So just once you get, basically we're passing batons, and once you get your baton, like do your piece and then send it back to us so we can do ours.
Okay. Thank you. And then now we're going to kind of switch from buyers to the sellers. But first, we're going to talk about buyers. What should a first-time buyer know before coming into the closing table?
First-time buyers, I like to educate them. So as we're going through documents, we're like making sure that they understand exactly what they're signing. The most important pieces, as far as like making sure their interest rate is what they locked into, making sure their payment amount is where it should be. If it's new builds, that first year, we all know that the taxes are kind of a little bit different. So making sure that they understand, like, pay a little extra into your escrow so that big tax bill doesn't hit you the next year. Making sure that they understand that once this gets closed, it becomes public record, and they're going to get a lot of junk mail at that point. And so the tax assessor is going to send them a letter asking how much they paid for the property, and that's what they want to tax them on. So educating them that we're a non-disclosure state, we don't send out sales prices, and they don't have to notify them of that. So just educating them on the pieces that I guess we take for granted because we deal with it every day, but that they might not understand.
That's perfect, great information on first-time home buyers, but then also for not just first-time home buyers, what documentations will buyers be signing, and how can they prepare ahead of time during the closing table?
So just the documents that they sign at closing is all of your lender documents. The lender is going to go over that closing statement with them prior to being at our table. If they don't understand something, that's where we can go over it again with them. They're going to be signing their note and their deed of trust. So the note is the terms, like the interest rate, when their first payment begins. Deed of trust, those are probably the two important documents. The deed of trust is what they file, basically showing that there's going to be a lien on the property at that point. So it gives the lender protection if they default on their loan. So those are probably the two most important documents that they sign at closing with us. Prior to that, there's not a lot of documents that they sign before with title.
Okay. Now, do they have to be physically there present for buyers or sellers to come and sign for the closing, or can they do remotely?
So it all depends on your lender as far as remotely. In Texas now, we do RON closing, so remote online notarization. And so a lot of our sellers have opted to do that instead of coming in for closings now. And then your buyers, a lot of lenders use hybrid packages now where you e-sign a lot of your documents before coming to the closing table. And then at closing, typically we're signing just the note, the deed of trust, and a few other documents that require notaries. I'm kind of biased in the fact that I want my customers there so I can go over all the documents with them. I just feel like that gives them a great closing experience to know like what the documents are instead of just tapping. But convenience has outweighed that. So sometimes it's just...
I always say that go to the closing table, know what you're exactly signing to review everything. But yes, you can do it remotely. It's still stress-free, but I think going physically and signing it, it's always my experience, a better experience for that, especially the first time home buyer too.
And it needs to be celebrated. It's a big step in their life.
Yes. So you need to come and we can all celebrate with you guys. Some of the extra things that might wanna, help buyers and the sellers know is about the mud and the pit. What is that exactly?
So the mud and the pit, those are municipal utility districts or something that is an extra taxing authority with the county. So we have to give notice of that. And so typically at contract, they have documents that they sign, but then we'll sign a different notice. And it's just notifying them that there's extra taxes that get taxed onto their bills.
And they should probably know that earlier anyway.
Yes. When they're looking at property.
Exactly. Now, why should the sellers open the title before going for sale?
So it helps us clean up issues prior to. So if it's inherited property, like I spoke on earlier, a lot of people think that they just automatically own it because their grandpa did. But if the proper paperwork wasn't filled out, then it's not necessarily in their name yet. So we got to clear up all of that to get it into their name so that they can sell it. So if they knowingly know that there is an issue, a death, a divorce, anything like that, it's a good idea to go ahead and open it so we can get it cleaned up prior to you getting a contract on it.
Okay. So you kind of advise that for the sale to go smoothly, or?
Yes. Yeah. Because once you get that contract, you want to meet your 30, 45-day timeline. And if we're cleaning up probates, that could cause a delay. And so it's just better if you can get it open beforehand.
Exactly. Now let's talk about like the T47, right? Like that's there. Do they have to have that notarized, or is there a form that they can just sign and then we can have?
So they have the T47.1 now that gets electronically.
What does that mean? What is that form?
So the T47 in itself is just the document that states that there have not been any changes to your existing survey that you're provided so that we can use that survey again for this next closing. Or if there have been minimal changes, you can list those out, and then that is just letting us know. You draw it in on your survey, you list it on the T47 what the changes were, and then you provide that to the escrow officer to see if we could still accept that survey.
This is for the sellers.
Yes.
And now let's talk about taxes, right? Yes. Who pays remaining taxes if you close in the middle of the month?
In the middle of the month or
whichever way, right?
So at closing, we will do tax prorations for the whole year. So right now, between October and December, they're a little bit different than what they are through the whole year. So between October and December, if taxes are out, we have to collect them. So at closing, the seller pays for the taxes between October and December, and then the buyer will give them a credit for the portion that they had. Between January and September, it's usually the opposite. So the seller will give the buyers a credit for the taxes for the amount of time that they owned it, and then the buyer will be responsible for taxes when they come out in October. And when we're doing those prorations at the beginning of the year, it's based on the previous year's tax rolls.
I see. So does it ever come back up to you guys once everything is done and closed or something?
Always.
Okay.
So there's different scenarios. New construction is a big one because, most of the time the vacant lot is what was taxed on. So I think the appraisals come out April, May. So we'll try and base it off of that amount once the appraised value comes in so that there's not a big discrepancy. But also, like if you have over 65 exemptions that were on there, or if my seller was exempt, well, let's do the reverse. Like my new buyer is 100% exempt, but my seller was not. So they were supposed to pay taxes, and then we close in October. Well, then my new buyer gets the bill, and they didn't have any escrows because they don't collect them. So basically my buyer was given a credit at closing that they needed to basically put aside and to pay the taxes. So that one's a big question you get asked about.
How do you guys handle that then?
So we basically have to just it's education, it's re-educating, saying, hey, at closing, we talked about this, that you would get this credit. And while it reduced the amount that you had to bring into closing, you had to set that money aside because the tax bill would be coming. But we also, at closing, we do have forms that we sign as far as tax proration agreements stating like, this is the best that we have with the information that we have since we're not the tax office, and that we can't force somebody to pay afterwards, that you and buyer and seller will work together to get that taken care of.
I see. I know I've had several of mine, and
taxes are always
confusion between the two and who to contact and who to reach. These talked about some of the exemptions. What are the ones that you guys talk about during closing to the home buyers?
So a homestead exemption is a big one.
What is that?
So it's basically just going to the county and saying, this is my homestead. And it does reduce the amount that you have to pay each year on taxes. I'm not sure of the percentage amount, but it does. And everyone qualifies for that with their house as long as it's their homestead. And then what we see also is over 65. So you qualify for being over 65. And then the ag exemptions are big ones too.
I see. So those are the three big ones.
Three big ones that I see. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then they can find all that information on the county
website, the county tax office.
Perfect. Okay. Now let's talk about sellers. Let's just say they're putting up the property on market, and this is where you also come in, right? They ask, hey, let us know which title to go with. And I'm going with Austin Title. Let's say, I'm thinking about choosing you guys. What are the things that you guys will help with that seller and preparation wise, you guys, for
It's always great if your seller doesn't already have a preferred title company. You as the agent can refer your favorites from the area. And then if the seller needs to get spoken to by a representative from our company, that's something that I'm happy to take on myself. Introduce them to Austin Title, tell them about how long we've been in the business, tell them about all of our offices, our online offerings, our remote online notarization, all of the things that we do as a company to help support them through the closing process and make them feel comfortable. And so once we are chosen as preferred title, then they get to start speaking to and working with their escrow team. Mm-hmm. And that's where the communication and that bond grows from with the seller, with the agent, with the escrow team, not only the escrow officer, but likely they have an assistant as well that's helping gather information and walk everyone through hand-holding from, okay, we're listing our property to, okay, now we're getting offers, and then all the way through until closing.
Perfect. And then you guys also have some kind of marketing that we can use and put it in the home, right?
Yes.
For the sellers.
Yeah, so we have an amazing resource called a property spotlight at Austin Title. And this is something that any homeowner can log into the Austin Title website, go to our resources, select the property spotlight, and you can put in your name and address and get all of the recorded documents pertaining to your property, such as the plats, the restrictions, the deeds of record. And then we also include area resources, and it's all laid out in a one-page QR code, scannable, beautiful little PDF document that you can have out at your listings so that prospective buyers can scan the QR code, really look into the property, know the details, have a better view of what this property entails, whether it's in an HOA and all of the restrictions that might come along with being part of that. And so that's one of the great marketing tools that we have is that property spotlight. And that's really for the sellers and prospective buyers at the home during those showings and open houses. And that's something that I like to put into a property binder. And so if you need a physical copy, I would print out the property spotlight, give it to the listing agent. And then in that binder, it has other things such as the current year's school guide, the entertainment guide, and local resources that pertain to the area that the property is located in.
Perfect. Anything else that you guys want to think that might be information to the viewers right now that you might want to
Well, I love that it's on a QR code because, like with the binders, it's at the house. But the QR code, when they scan it and they have it up on their phone, they're able to take that with them. So it still stays in the forefront of their minds because they still have it in front of them physically to see. And so, but also like we have the app that to create the net sheets. So like your seller and buyer net sheet.
I forgot about the net sheets.
Yeah.
That's actually very
Those are very
important, especially for the sellers, right? What is a net sheet for the sellers to know?
Okay. I can speak to this. I run net sheets all day, every day.
Okay.
And so I will do that on behalf of the agents or the sellers. And, but I also recommend learning our tool yourself because you can have the Austin Title Agent One app on your phone. And that is a way for you to run just about any calculation pertaining to the property. Let's say you have someone who wants to refinance. You can do a refinance calculator and show you what your new monthly payment would be based on the new interest rate. You can do the seller net sheet, which is a visual representation of all the numbers that go into the closing. So you can say the sales price, you can put the date of closing, and any miscellaneous specifics pertaining to the offers that you're getting in. And you push compute and boom, you have a beautiful PDF that lays out all of the numbers, including taxes and insurance and holding costs and all of the things so that you get a real picture of what you're walking into at the closing table before you're there. So that's a way for someone whose home, let's say, has been sitting on the market for a little while and they're entertaining various offers. You can look and see what the sales price that's being offered looks like in numbers so that you can see, okay, this is what I would be taking home at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that really helps people seeing that visually. Okay, this is all that's going into it and this is what we're walking away with. Am I willing to accept that or should we keep entertaining other offers?
Yeah. And then in this market right now, being a buyer's market, what are you guys seeing in the contracts coming in? Is it more of what the sellers are paying a lot of the things right now, or is it still being negotiated, you think? How have you seen it in the market right now?
I still see a lot of sellers paying closing costs, like negotiating closing costs. So I would still say that it's a buyer's market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then another thing that a lot of people don't know is about the warranty, especially if it's a resale home, right? And there's an option for the sellers to buy the first year warranty for the buyers. Now, how do you guys go about that? Because a lot of people don't know, like, on the process.
So we'll look at the contract and there's an allotted amount that the seller is willing to use for that 1-year home warranty. We have a couple of options in our office. We have recs that come in and speak on it. But then we will give the information to the buyers because really while the seller's paying for it, it's a benefit for your buyer. And so your buyers really need to be the one that picks their home warranty because they're the ones that are going to build a relationship with them. And so we'll give them 3 or 4 options via email, and then they'll pick which one they want, and then we can get that ordered for them so that it's all there at closing for them. And then we always include our agents on those emails because while we have our 3 options, a lot of agents have their preferred home warranty companies too that they've built long relationships with.
Now, when they're purchasing that, do they need to pay for it and show you guys a receipt, or how does that work?
No, we will order it directly from the home warranty company and pay it at closing.
Got it.
Because it's a seller charge, and so you don't want your buyers paying for it, and then because of the way the contract's written, it says that the seller will pay for it. So if it is over the allotted amount, just send us the invoice. We'll put the buyer charge of like the extra $200 that they may want, and then the seller will pay the difference of what they agreed to.
So all they need to know is let you know
who they want.
And then also important to know, let you know about not you, but like the home insurance is for the lenders, but at least we have everything.
Yes, because typically your lenders are requiring that we pay that at closing. And so one of our big compliance issues, we have to have an invoice that matches what is collected first. So I see sometimes at closing, like it might be the day before, they're like, oh, well, I found this insurance that's a little less. And of course, we all want less insurance, but now my insurance invoice doesn't match what I am collecting for. And so it's very important that anytime you are thinking of changing, make sure your lender and your title company knows and has all the updated information.
Yeah, and that can cause another delay.
It can cause another delay, yes.
Yes. Okay. Anything else you guys think that we might have missed uncovering on the important things about closing in Texas?
Well, I'll go over one. Just since Texas is a community property state, a lot of times we see a seller that may have purchased the property prior to being married. And so we'll get at closing and they'll be like, well, I owned this before I got married, so it's mine to just do what. Well, it doesn't work that way in Texas.
Yeah.
So because your wife now lived at the property, she has a homestead right in that property, which requires her to sign off on all the documents. And so it's important that we discuss that ahead of time. And if you were married since you bought that property, that we have all of that information.
Got it. Yeah. A lot of people they don't know that.
They do not, because it's not an ownership issue. It's a homestead issue, which is completely different. And so, yes, I'm not arguing the fact that you don't own it 100% yourself. I'm just arguing that we have to take care of her homestead right. So,
yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think that wraps up with the whole thing about what the viewers need to know about the purchasing home, either buyers or the sellers in Texas. I want to say thank you guys for coming from Austin Title and spending a little bit time with us and educating our viewers on the closing with the buyers and the sellers.
Thank you.
Yes. Yep. You're welcome. That was all you need to know about how we close homes right here in Austin, Texas. I hope you guys learned a little bit about why title company is involved, what is the importance of having a title company, and what you need as a buyer and a seller during your closing. I just want to say thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.